Welcome to this edition of Policy Matters here on Intellectual Radio. My guest tonight is two distinguished gentlemen I have to come in and talk to us about policy matters within the African American community. And I titled this show, The State of the Black Community and the Role That the Black Man Plays in It. I'm going to introduce my two guests and this very distinguished guest because I respect and admire both of these individuals. First and foremost, Matthew Jackson, 40-something-year-old and father of four, lives in the community, property owner, adjunct tenured professor at one of the city colleges. Our next guest is Mr. Michael Haskins. He's a married father of three, grandfather, 40-plus-year-old union man, was born and raised in the community and saw that community shape and grow. Haskins, part of the Lawndale Youth Commission, which was one of the first gangs in Lawndale, way before the organized gangs started coming out. That's what we had. We had a Lawndale Youth Commission that matured into different things. So we're gonna dive right into this and these guys. So Mr. Michael Haskins is a 40-year-plus union guy. Same job for 40 years, something that's kind of like almost unheard of. So I want you to give us a little bit of your take of your experience when you started out in the workforce. What did you see? How did you see it transpire?
Thank you for having me. Teenager primarily, 15 years old back in the 60s, getting a work permit and bounced around from different jobs, and job was at Sears in Holman. Worked there through high school onto AT&T in 1968. That's where IBEW 164, 165, union man, and gave them, up until 2011, gave them 44 plus years. What changed primarily for the African American was the opening up in the mid 60s, opportunities to have the job. At 1968, we were the first in the sense, I was a telephone installer. And I wasn't allowed in my own people's houses occasionally because they weren't accustomed to African American telephone men.
Wow. So you say that and you think about that back in 68, accustomed to having come in our house and be productive, be productive. But on the on shift of that, a good, strong model in our communities. Our communities was modeled by Matthew's father. Right. When they came up with doing the Great Migration, taught us trades, worked hard, relationships within the community as values in us. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces that's missing. A lot of this youth today don't have surrounding them values and principles and different things like that. So Matthew, you lived in the Lawndale community for quite a bit. Tell me some of the things that you have seen that when you was a child until shaped and focused now.
And thank you, Todd, for having me on your show. In reference to some of the things that I observed as a youth and as a resident of North Lawndale and a lifelong dedicated individual to my neighborhood. About my parents, I think about from and what they instilled children. I remember my father saying, learn how to take nothing. And that is a skill set. That is a skill set that by individuals that have lived a life where the resources plentiful for them. So they had to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And waste not, want not. I hear my father saying that as well. These are certain idiosyncrasies that as men that have humble beginnings. That being said, we learn how to adapt based off of, and growing up in North Lawndale, I remember my first job. My first job was that of learning how to recycle. There were 10-cent bottles all about the ground. And as a kid, I'm speaking 7, 8 years of age, I would collect these bottles, take those bottles to the grocery store. A&P grocery store was located in Pulaski at that time. And those dimes really added up to dollars. And being a product of that environment, I learned from my parents the afraid to work, to acquire the things that you want in life. And that spills over as an adult.
Right. So that we just had, and I'm going to shoot a question to him. Another guest is Mr. Brutus. He's father of 3, school council, Grand Crossing Advisory Board, Coalition for African American Leaders. He as well as a 2-time Democratic candidate, 2-time Democratic candidate for the House. So is part of the Haitian American League, and I may be saying that wrong. However, when you talk of, when Matthew was saying taking nothing and making something, he seen the devastation, the devastation after the hurricanes, and your first generation being over here. Americans, Native African Americans, we look and say, people come over here and they work so hard and they do everything and they mature. And you're familiar with Lawndale because you policies around Lawndale. So tell us about taking nothing and making something. Parents instilled.
It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you, Jonathan, for inviting me to this, I think, a very, and you're absolutely correct. The mindset of an immigrant is a phenomenon that Americans are trying to figure out, right? And being first generation, obviously, I've lived it. I'm very close to my family. I understand the Haitian mindset, and I will tell you that the Haitians are a very hardworking people with education as a focus. We're very resilient and fortunate to travel to my country before and after. and after the earthquake. And I can tell you that important component to the, never quit, because Haitians have always been in a state of having to do more. Now that's historical because of a lot of intervention activities from other nations, and I won't go into that right now unless we want to explore that later. But Haiti has always been a country that has been in a state of interruption, and so have always had to overcome something, overcome challenges, overcome public policy, overcome politics, overcome a lot of things. As you know, Haiti is the first Black republic in the galaxy, and we fought back the French. We fought ourselves out of slavery, and being that example for Black people been one, a motivation, but also a curse, because as you know, the white man has always to suppress Black people, not only here but across the world. And so I think that that demonstration of a fighter's spirit, independent, we all people, we've faced punitive reaction for that, and we still face that still.
So
yeah, go ahead.
So topic and shaping that topic, and Matthew said a few things, and Mike said a few things, and you said a few things, and the Black community is in dire straits right now. So from my perspective, I've seen several things that happen within the Black community. The policy of the Reagan administration, and I can go on record and say that he stands to be the worst president ever. That's me, and that's my position. I'm not going to do a Tony Preckwinkle and backtrack that. The worst president ever in American history. Deal with the Iran-Contra and the shipment of the drugs is just the same things that the mafia did when they allowed heroin to come to our communities in the 70s.
Exactly.
In the 60s.
In the 60s.
Well, that's what proliferated our communities in the 70s.
Cocaine in the 80s.
The cocaine, but it's really started
in the 60s.
In the 60s, after King was murdered.
You was there.
They said never again will we allow a cohesive amount of people coming together like they came together. But we were in the movement in the 60s.
And now we're 50 years into that.
Right. And the influx of neighborhood was unbelievable. And they knew from that influx that it would perpetuate the machine that's been rolling with crime, staining the system of hatred we have for ourselves, and using it to that point. The movement. Yes.
The movement. Tell us about your experience, because I think that's real crucial to tell us about your experience and who you studied under, some key figures, and tell us about the movement, because the movement was before cell phones,
right?
Texas,
right?
Internet.
Well, you
so talk about the movement.
And I'm a descendant of some of the migrants that came here to Chicago, the Chicagoland area in the 30s, and we came up. I'm a Christian, this church, and a lot of the preachers, a lot of the pastors, and other Southerners involved in their churches in the South. Well, they had ties. Remember, the civil rights movement really started in 1955 when Rosa Parks decided, no more. I'm not going to the back of the bus. Alabama, not riding that bus. Put it in motion. Well, I was fortunate enough, by the time I got into 7th grade, I had Al Raby, great teacher, in the movement. And Al Raby talked to us, judged our temperament, and asked us to give time. BBR, Better Boys Republic on 15th
Yes, I know exactly.
and Hamlin.
Yes.
Dick Gregory would come in.
Yes.
And same thing, the summers were spent with college students from what they call HCBUs. Now, I'm talking about the late 50s and early 60s.
Right.
And they were also, because they were conscious, they were intelligent, and enough was enough. We wanted to chest, that's I Am a Man. Remember that placard that they had in Memphis when King was killed? Be treated as men. And everybody in our neighborhood worked. But there was still not jobs that were comparable to what other races had. And we were said enough is enough. The principle of nonviolence, which was very difficult. King Street.
I concur.
Turn the other cheek. We weren't turning the other cheek.
No.
And so we had a chance to meet in 66, I think, or 65. Moved in on 15th in Hamlin, an apartment building.
Yes.
And he was at BBR, and I think it was 65 or 66, and we marched in Marquette Park. Experiences I ever had in my life.
Terrific.
I saw fear on his face, the Reverend Abernathy's face. I saw, Mr. Al Raby, this Pastor Bevel, he didn't have any fear, never did. And it was like, look, but we could not retaliate. Entrench me into understanding the movement as it came about. But what I didn't understand at the time was the background of in place by the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, and the rest of the boys.
Right.
Saw that. You also saw the Democratic National Convention in '60s when they bust head.
Yes, Chicago. That was we had never seen. Growing up, I was in high school, mid '60s. Range was vast, not just the neighborhood. I loved rock music and other music. Out in the park occasionally, behind the Chicago Historical Society. Like the group of young people from everywhere in the city, trading ideas and talking, Viola and DePaul. And we were at high school. Listen to them, and they talk about this, the world being at war. War had come. That Vietnam War was decimating, was real. Going down the rows of schools in Chicago, and when you graduated as a senior, 65 to 68, and you were just drafted. Yeah, you were gone. Action. It was never declared war. And so we talked about that, and so it was, the war movement was big by 68. The president of the day, and it was about let's protest this war. It's for a democratic society on the north side. Tom Hayden, a couple, I can't think of all their names. And these boys were subversive, you hear me? And we had never seen that Chicago. Chicago was not the Blackstone Rangers, was not the conservative Vice Lords. And I mean, let's face it. These boys were talking anarchy to us.
Yes.
So the Latin Kings were there and a lot of other black groups. You can't do that. I remember meeting Gutierrez. He was a young man. You can't do this. They said, look, we're going to march down. The convention was being held at the Sheridan Blackstone on Conrad Hilton. We're going to march down and confront and protest the Republican National Convention in Chicago.
And they beat them up. They beat them white.
The first night, they beat the cops up. They were standing there in their riot. They really didn't have on riot gear. And said, we can go down here and see this.
Right.
So we went and stood by that statue on 11th in Michigan. It's a statue, name of the statue. And we stood up there and kicked back. We wanted to see this. And 100 people came down Michigan Avenue. And they were protesting, and they got about, and they stopped, and they were talking to one another. Bricks and bottles came from the back of the crowd, and police were dropping like flies. Wow. Confrontation that night. The next night, came out, helmets went on, and out, young men out. You hear me?
So you said a lot. I wanted to be able to touch on that because people don't understand. We got activists today, and we do certain things civically, and I one of the things that I think that is really crucial that is missing from our community. You know, I think the Jewish community has done great in keeping their issue on the forefront. They have done great. They got in schools. One of the things that I would love to see every, not just for 1 month, part of our history curriculum needs to be education as far as from the slave trade on up. Because see, when people they repeat it and they're allowing to be forgotten. You know your history. You know,
Jonathan, that's an excellent idea, and I concur with it. However, in terms of curriculum, to start pre-slavery. When we start pre-slavery, it teaches us that we are people of great intelligentsia. It teaches us that we are people that are mathematicians. For example, you look at the pyramids in Egypt, still a mathematic enigma today. That those pyramids were constructed men and women of color. So that is a crucial point that needs to be brought out.
Right. That's how important Black history is to the world.
That's right.
To the world.
So we got a caller. Caller, you there?
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Oh.
Hey, Jerry Brown, the coolest guy in town. So you got a question or a comment?
First of all, hello to all the guests, everybody's name, but that gentleman in the middle there, we kind of like kindred spirits from the West Side. I am one of Mama Bell's baby boys, there for 32 years myself. And you were mentioning that group of mentors, if you will, that you had there, like Al Raby and James Bevel. Let's not forget Gus Savage. Gus Savage was also a West Side.
Right. Gus was,
although he served in the United States Congress out on the South Side, but Gus Savage also started there on the West Side. And I remember that very well myself. And kind of ties into what you were saying. You were talking about that Haitian spirit. I think back to Toussaint Louverture. He was involved in the Haitian Revolution, and that whole Haitian spirit of hard work and get it and don't stop. Well, I think one of the reasons Haitian by Haitian to America today, or it's oppressed today, is because if that spirit was to come here and really catch on, like it did during the struggle of Africans who came here who came further, in the diaspora, came further than Haiti into America. If that spirit was actually getting here in America, we probably wouldn't be in the situation that we're in today. But I got a question, and this is for all three of you guys. We talk about what happened in the back. We talk about how young men were mentored. Older Black men actually sat down and taught what it was to be a Black man in America. They got them involved in the struggle, and that no longer happens today. I think one of the reasons we talk about how great Roscoe was, but there was a big difference in the greatness of Bryansville. And I think that's where the beginning of the breakdown of Black unity began, and we have to do as elders in our community who know what the struggle is, who know what needs to be done. What is it that we have to do in order to get that train back on the track and get moving in the right direction? I call for you gentlemen to speak to that.
Well, that's a very good question, Jerry. And I really do feel, I had this conversation with someone today about how long it's taken for us to get into the demise of the black man, the black family, the black economics, our black condition. And you said it earlier, it really started in the 60s.
Yeah.
So we've been in a 50-year decline.
Right.
And it's been strategic, it's been purposeful, it's been on demand. If we don't propose to do radical things, another 50 years for us to get out, that'll be beyond our lifetimes here, the 4 of us sitting here today. So we've got to come up with some radical concepts. The black family, the black man, our economics, our independence, our collective. We've got to do something different than rely on incremental policy changes that are not designed with the black condition. And, not downing any other races or any other minority groups, but you can tell now exactly, it's very clear where the United States is headed in regards to uplifting other groups. It's not black migrants. It's other groups that are identifying as having human rights issues, such as LGBT communities, transgenders. Those are the other quote unquote new minorities. A treatment that is, policy-wise to uplift their condition. And so ourselves have to really decide, do we want to get in alignment with a policy-oriented way out, or do we want to take it upon ourselves and do some things that are radical concepts?
So I'm game for a little bit of both.
Right.
I think you need a little bit of the radicalization of, to wake up people up. And we have to set in place some key policies to make sure we do those things. And one of the things that I see a big push going on, masculinity of the black man.
Mm-hmm.
The dress,
right? The gender neutral clothing now.
The gender neutral clothing. You got guys wearing rat boots and they think it's okay, and
you have men with man bags.
Yeah.
It's being socially accepted as normalization of all that.
I carry a man bag.
Does it help our young people? Okay. I don't carry a man bag. I have a wallet. Okay.
Can I jump in here for a moment?
I got a wallet, y'all. I got a wallet just for those of you at home.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This is, you guys are hilarious. This is Jackson Matthew. Listen, very excellent question. Me to a place. Back to, my old man. He would always say at home. And what does that mean? Is what can we do? We as strong men get involved in our own neighborhoods. We're going to start right there. Jonathan stated about this sagging. Also mentioned about the being their masculinity is being compromised. That is because what a real man looked like. And oftentimes we sit back and we shake our head in disbelief. Look at that boy there. His pants is around his ankles. Belief, but we do not intervene. And when we intervene, individuals that care, the betterment and the well-being of our fellow young man. And we talked about being radical versus policy. I concur with Jonathan. There's a combination of both. Really address that as the strong men. We need to step out and approach these individuals and have a heart-to-heart conversation about correctly, and do it sincerely with a caring heart. They will feel and understand that you really truly have an innate care about the betterment of those individuals. I think that's what we really need to do as a start and build from there.
Yeah. So, Mike, you was about to say something. What can we do about the change?
Primarily, we have to teach these young men the main thing. They got to love themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They got to care about themselves. They are worthy. Comes their way. Whatever. Aim high. You know, we used to say back in the 60s, each one teach one. Coach, you pull mine. Hey, look what I learned here. We philosophize, get on the point sometimes, and just talk. College students, even guys coming home from the service, anything, one another. These youngsters today, they come out the house, and the most negative qualities influence them. Place known when you're in jail that if you wear your pants sagging, that signifies. So how can that be so influential in the street? What sense does it make to see young men walking down the street holding his pants up and walking like with his legs gapped wide open to keep his pants up? It boggles the mind. You know, Jesse Jackson, 20 years ago when it first started happening, about guys was wearing their hair braided and wearing blue jean jackets like they were on the yards. Understand what you're symbolizing out here in the street. You're doing it, but the influence you have is profound. And then the same way in our music change. Excuse me, much younger than all of I am. Think about how hip hop changed from when you were 18 and 19 to where it went through.
Yes.
You know.
So I saw a lot of changes. I remember going to school and they had shops. You can go to wood shop, you can go electric shop, you can go to machine shop, and everybody went college bound, and they gave us the ideology that you know
vocational training.
Vocational training.
Right.
You know, they gave us the ideology that everybody needed to go to college. I know I'm a son of a carpenter. My father taught me that trade, and I can always fall back on that and I can make a living. I can feed my family. You know, but they made us being business owners. We became, again, workers. All we are workers in this society now.
Yeah, but half a loaf is better than none. Excuse me, John. Mr. Brown, are you still there? Where did you work for AT&T?
I started out in Franklin Park. I left there and I went to 89th State.
Okay.
There, I was all around.
Yeah, what did you come in? What was your first job?
I came in as a building cable apprentice in PBX, and then
okay.
They kind of did some of everything with it until I got sick of it back in 08.
Well, see, that piggybacks on what you were just saying. We picked up a trade. We came out of school. And you went to a lot of schooling for PBX, right?
Yes, I did.
I started out as an installer, hanging off the poles. Right. 19 years old with a truck. Right after the riots, it was unbelievable. Good. And that was symbolizing that, wow, a black man is doing this. And
I was listening to how you were talking about certain places. I started out in Franklin Park, and if you knew what Franklin Park
I know exactly what you're talking about. I worked 3801 North Manheim in high school. Right. And I know what you're talking about, my man.
It was rough, but it was worth it because I left there with a marketable skill. And even at my age today, I'm still marketable and I still have people approach me.
That's good.
I'm going to make 2 comments and then I'm going to let you guys throw it around. Pat, I think it was Jonathan that said something that there was a mix of both policy and things. And Patrick kind of alluded that what we need to do is more outside of the policy thing. That the name of the show is Policy Matters because I'm so involved with what goes on with our government, and I talk about it, and I bring a lot of people involved in government onto the show. I think that what we should be fighting for is policy from our dependence upon government. Mm-hmm. That is what's killing us more than anything. They give us food, they give us housing, we want, and that takes away the desire. It takes away the will to do for yourself. It takes away that gotta go get it spirit that Patrick was talking about. Africans brought here, and it stopped off in Haiti with Toussaint Louverture and the rest of them, and it stopped off, and they have found a way to take that out of us. We got to get away from that.
It makes you lazy.
Fighting for policy. We need to be fighting for policy to hurt people, but to make people to stand up and say, we got to do for ourselves. And there's, I think your name was Charles. You said something about the biggest gang and the toughest gang in Chicago is the Chicago police. You all might remember this, but when Leroy Martin took over as the superintendent of police, he stood on camera down at ABC station there on State Street, and he made that exact
right.
He said the Chicago police is the toughest gang in Chicago. That was back when we were having like 9,000 people killed every year, but it was always concentrated in the public housing units, right, and that's where it wasn't affecting the rest of the city. But the murders were a lot worse then. Nothing about it then. So I'm going to sign off. Let you guys finish. You guys, great job. You guys are talking about a subject that really needs to be talked about, and I wish you had more time than an hour. Thanks so much, and I'll talk to you guys next week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care, brother.
So I just want to say maybe put a ribbon on it, but I'm not sure if it will close the conversation or not. But we got vocational training. We were, homes with fathers and uncles around and grandfathers, and we were conditioned to be productive citizens, independent-minded thinkers. And 30 years, it's switched to us being productive citizens to us being productive for supply chains. Now, our arrests, our delinquent behavior is feeding the prison system. It's feeding the criminal justice system. It's feeding law enforcement system. Like, we are put to an end objective. And so, we need to have smart policies. This policy matters. So it's kind of, weird for me to say that I want radical change, but we've got to, like you said, be role models for these young kids, pull them by the ear, give them some real man-to-man stuff, teach them how to be men, teach them how to be independent, teach them how to be focused, teach them how to be, better citizens, because we're going to lose the next generation if we don't do it.
We got to shape tomorrow through getting engaged.
The things we do today, right?
And that may be in many aspects, whether it's our own kids and our, because many times these kids don't have an uncle or brother, and mama trying to work, put ends meet together, and she don't have the ability or the time to focus. We have to get involved, whether it's in our local advisory board, running for public office to shape these policies. Matthew, you wanted to say something.
In terms of they lack that. I give you an example. We talked a few minutes ago about sagging. I was cutting my grass. Young fellow walked by. He had his pants in his buttocks and his kneecaps.
Right.
And he barely could walk. And I said, son. And I said, can I ask you a question? He says, yeah, what's up? Why do you wear your pants hanging off your behind? Tell me. because I would like to know. He could not explain to me that.
Mm.
His explanation was everybody else do it. And from there, we engaged in a conversation. I explained to him, I said, hanging off your butt, you're. He wears his pants in the dead of winter like that.
Mm-hmm.
He just didn't know. And from at the end of the conversation, and he pulled his pants up. I said, next thing you need to do is invest in a belt. So it goes back to having conversation, because many of them are clueless. Why? Because there are absentee fathers. And I don't want to go off onto why there's absentee fathers. I say, the caller, Mr. Brown, stated, what can we do? I am all in for stepping up and being a surrogate father for any and everyone that.
So you're going to have a lot of people knocking at your doors.
I have no problem.
Well, that goes back to each one, teach one.
Matt,
Yeah.
you're going to have to buy a lot of belts.
Right.
Yes. We go to AMVET, so we do what we got to do.
But I think our people worth it.
Because if we don't,
Normalized now. They don't even know. Like, you're right.
Yeah.
It's normalized.
who will? Just the other day, today is
29th.
Monday. Saturday, kids were throwing bottles in the alley. I was taking the trash out. I yelled at them. They stopped. I said, your parents live 2 doors over. They drive down this alley to park. I went and got a broom and a shovel. They have, they're clueless when it comes to having self-pride in your appearance, having self-pride in where you reside. They're clueless. Why? Because they are absentee parents, and we as individuals in our neighborhood carry duty. We can no longer turn a blind eye, because those kids, and if we don't, no one else will.
So what do you think, Mike, are some of the things that we can do as Black men in our, to change this gap?
Well, primarily it's lead by example. That's the very first thing you must always do. You
Exactly.
lead by example. And what you just explained. Now, long after you've gone back in the house, and they'll look at you like, damn, we can't get away with that. He's around. And how you doing, Mr. So-and-so?
Yes.
They'll speak to you a
Yes.
certain way. But what they see all day long, contact with, in your generation that is behind me, can be quite negative in our community. Let's be honest. The same basic living at the very low end, what you run into out there. You know what I'm saying? It's like you do whatever you have to do. You stand on the corner, it's like a vulture. They stand around waiting for something to die.
Yes.
Well, you're not gonna die today. It was, if you didn't work, you can't eat. Common statement.
That's it.
You
Man
know, if
don't
you
work,
didn't work,
man don't
you
eat.
didn't, right.
Yes.
And you found something. It's just like you were talking about 10-cent bottle. When I came up, it was 2 cents. 15 cents for a milk jug.
Yeah, I was a pop-out hustler.
Yes.
But the same thing. I would get laughed at. Po' boy hustling bottles. Rinse them out. I had a wagon. 6 milk jugs in a wagon and rattle them down. Everybody knew you were hustling.
Yes.
Get 15 cents a piece.
Right.
Yes.
8 or 9 years old. I walked out of the store. Guess what happened?
Exactly.
Give me
And you had a girl.
Yeah, no. It was no, you ain't getting a damn thing.
Right.
You saw what I just did.
Right.
You do it too.
You can do it
Give
too.
me some competition.
Right.
You can do it too.
You can do it
Right.
too.
So it was a good question you asked about what do we do to change our mindset. And so speak to that, because I think for those of us who are not right? To go out there and, be that person that those kids don't normally see, right? You've got to come out of your comfort zone. Understand that you've got to do something different for yourself, and whatever motivates you, right? So, the truth here, I grew up in the suburbs, right? I'm from University Park, 60466. Boom. So I'm from the south suburbs, and I grew
West
up.
Side suburbs.
There it is. There it is. So I didn't have these experiences growing up. Right? Honestly, okay, I did not have these experiences growing up. The community that I was raised in, one could say Pleasantville in the 80s. Okay. And then I experienced white flight. And it changed as I was coming out of high school. In terms of, being in an environment where around kids who are fatherless or absentee parents, or there aren't male role models, that's not my norm, right? That's not my norm. But my comfort zone, right? Because my motivation is I've got a son. My firstborn is Matt. He's 11 now, and I want to make sure that I can play and go into even places that we go to are safe for him. So take my garbage out. I've got to make sure I bring him with me so he knows what his neighbors. I've got to make sure that my kids around other kids. So I had to come out of my comfort zone and be, the things that we're talking about here today for other kids.
Right. I think we had a good spirited conversation, and I think we have to continue this conversation to the masses, not just in this room here and on this station, for people to view it. So that's another do, but continue this. We have to go to the schools. We have to talk to our children. We have to instill this in our grandchildren, every person that we possibly can. And to get civically involved, like yourself, Patrick, Matt working, school teaching, college professor, Mr. Haskins, call him Mr. Haskins because that's my father-in-law. And I still have to give him due respect. And that's just the way I appreciate that's the way I was raised.
Absolutely.
But the family call him the Oracle because he know a little bit about everything. And
Mr. Wizard.
Right.
I really appreciate each and every one of you guys coming. I respect you guys, and that's why I asked you guys to come have a very spirited conversation about Black men and the role that we can play in our community and shape policies and different things. Week. Tune in. It'll be another interesting show here on Intellectual Radio. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.